What is up, YouTube? It's Rahul. I am back with another YouTube video today for you guys. I don't really know what my plan is for content until Evolving Skies comes out, so when that drops, I'm going to do 2 to 3 weeks of straight content, either on Twitch, on YouTube, etc. Come hang out with me. We'll prepare for the POG Championships together. We'll get a couple of good lists up for, that little bit of sliver of the format we have by itself, and then we'll get some post-rotation lists up and running, and we can get some fun stuff, going. So come hang out, twitch.tv/theflea, you know where it is. If you guys are enjoying the content here, subscribe, like, the deal. But for today's video, what we're going to be doing is going over the top 16 decks from the CGU 10K Fest. Now, granted, it was not the biggest event. It was like 128 players. But there were 16 decks that performed incredibly well. And what I want to kind of get out of this is that we're going to look at the list that performed well, take the key pieces out of that, and how are we going to take that for the future upcoming post-rotation format. There's a lot of trends to be observed here and a lot of decks and deck lists to look at, so I want us to look at this together, kind of analyze it properly, and when you start thinking about it in this capacity, it'll definitely help you learn and be better as a player, and learn what kind of cards are secret cards, secret pickups, things that can really make the difference. So that's kind of what I wanted to go over today and work on our skill set, kind of like a teaching video as well as a deck list analysis video. So here we are. This is the CGU Fest. Let me zoom in a little bit more if I can. Yeah, 125 seems good. So there were the top 16 decks breakdown is right here. I'm highlighting it here with my camera or my mouse, if you guys can see that. In the top 16 breakdown decks, we did see that there were 7 Shadow Rider Calyrex decks, 4 Zacian Inteleon decks, 2 Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon decks, 1 Inteleon VMAX, 1 Ice Rider Calyrex, and 1 Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon Moltres. If you guys are watching the content that I put out and you are a fan of the channel, you know that abomination is me. It's me. That's me. I'm the one. I'm the one. And then what happened going from 16 to top 8? Well, the Zacian Inteleons had a very good conversion rate. 75% of them moved on. Only 1 lost their match. 3 of the Shadow Rider Calyrex moved on. That means 4 of them lost their matches. And the Inteleon VMAX won their match. And, well, I won my match. I did. I was against the Ice Rider. So me and the other one guy ended up going against each other. That's very unfortunate, actually. So we're going to start taking a look at some of these lists and some of the players and how they played their lists and what can we take from these lists. Now, I believe Peter, Kika, and Ryan Antonucci played the same 60-card list, so we're going to look at this first. Peter played 4 Zacian, 4, 3, 2, 1 Light of Inteleon. I believe only 1 of the quick shooting Inteleon. 2 Professor's Research, Bird Keeper. Now, Bird Keeper is a card that is not being talked about too much right now in the post-rotation format. That's because everyone has assumed the staple support is going to be Research, Boss, Marnie. But when you have a card like Bird Keeper into your air balloons to continue resetting them, it's a very strong card when you're going to continue to build your hand, especially with a card like Zacian V. So that's a card that I think definitely is worth looking into, potentially for deck building stuff. That's just my 2 cents. I think don't discount Bird Keeper off the bat. Bird Keeper could probably still be really good. That's just what I am going to say about that. You don't have to take my word for it, but I'm just thinking that Bird Keeper is going to be good. Now, the rest of the list looks very standard, but let's look at what's new and different. 1 Tool Scrapper. Now, I talked to Peter a little bit, and he did say the 1 Tool Scrapper was for the mirror primarily, where Cape of Toughness is getting bigger and better. So more and more people are realizing that Cape of Toughness is a very good card, which enables a lot of these baby V Pokemon that are already very strong by themselves to battle with these VMAXs and efficiently prize trade. And with Cape of Toughness coming back into the format, or actually having its first stand in the format, which means that gives Tool Scrapper and Tool Jammer a chance to excel as well. Now, Tool Scrapper is better than Tool Jammer because you can use it exactly when you want to use it, but you have to discard it if it's in a researchable hand. But with the Inteleon engine and Bird Keepers and stuff like that, as opposed to a heavier research line, you have a better chance of finding it when you need it. So Tool Scrapper, very cool card that's coming back. Cape of Toughness is a card that I talked about a little bit already in the basic style, big basics decks. Invest in Cape of Toughness. This card's going to be very good in the upcoming format. Plus 50 HP on a basic Pokemon is no joke. It's going to be a lot of trouble to deal with. Now, this card is really cool. Sir Cheshire Bath. What Sir Cheshire Bath does is minus 20 to basics. Really offsets a lot of math, a lot of numbers. So even in the mirror match, like Zacian mirror match, a Sir Cheshire Bath hitting the board can really change the math on things. This stadium is something that people aren't really talking about, and is probably not being picked up right now. So this is one of Rahul's sneaky buys, I guess. It's not sneaky anymore because it's been about a week and a half since this tournament happened. But this is Rahul's sneaky buy. Grab yourself Sir Cheshire Baths before they spike. Get your playset. That's all I can say about that. I do believe this was a similar 60, or it was one extra. What did Ryan play that Peter did not? It's a 1 card difference, just by the initial look of things. I can't tell what the 1 card difference is, but I don't care enough to figure it out. So we have Chris Franco's top 8 Shadow Rider Calyrex list. Chris, I played in Swiss. The list was very good. It felt very standard. Chris did not go ahead and play any gimmicks. He went for the very straightforward 4/4 Shadow Rider, 2/2 Alchemy, and a Cresselia. I do think Cresselia is very, very strong in this upcoming format. So Cresselia is definitely a 1 to 2 of buy that I think is very important for a lot of decks, especially going second with Shadow Rider, having the option to Cresselia. A lot of things don't knock out the Cresselia immediately, or if they do, they are facing the threat of a Shadow Rider Calyrex or an Alchemy VMAX coming in the next turn and blowing up your attacker. So trading 3 for 1 prizes in any world does not seem good. So Cresselia, a really, really good card here. I'm going to just like scroll quickly through the list. If you guys want to get these lists, just screenshot them, grab them, do your thing. I'm just not going to spend a ton of time in depth. I'm just going to put that out there. Now, with a list like Shadow Rider, I do think the 1 Acrobat is very good and essential for the dig. And if you have a bad start, you might need to actually get more cards. The 4-ofs across the board is something I really enjoy about Chris's list. 4 Training Court is something that I think is really, really strong as well. Training Court is another stadium that is super criminally underrated. It is picking up steam because more and more players are playing post-rotation and realizing that Training Court is really good. But there's going to be situations where Training Court, like I talk about in my Evolving Skies set release video, where you don't want to give your opponent a Training Court to kind of do their own strategy, because it is a double-edged sword, for sure. So that's where the Pumpkaboo comes into play a little bit. And then we have Gabe Samara's Shadow Rider Calyrex list, which is also very straightforward standard. There's no Cresselia on Gabe's list, so going second, he doesn't have that advantage of potentially getting a Cresselia onto the board with the air balloon, just getting the ball rolling. 3 air balloons out of Chris, I really like that as well. You don't have that option at all for you, but Gabe is playing 2 copies of Crobat. Everything else is 4-ofs across the board, and Gabe is playing 1 copy of Energy Recycler, which I think is very interesting. Now, the card you could slot into that as well is Ordinary Rod. Recycler or Ordinary Rod kind of fulfill the same purpose, but towards the late game, all you really need to do is get energies onto the board and flood the board. And when you're playing 2/2 Alchemy, the idea is you're going to be discarding a lot of energy and a lot of Pokemon, or like a lot of energy. So having the Recycler really does help you just get those energies back. I prefer Ordinary Rod because if you're playing a 2/2 line of Alchemy and you have to discard one of the 2 pieces somewhere along the line, and the other piece is prized, all of a sudden your combo is a little bit wonky, and Galarian Moltres does seem like a threat. Still, again, the 4 switching cards with the 2 switch, 2 air balloon here, the 3 switch, or 1 switch, 1 air balloon here, 3 air balloon here, and you also see Chris is playing the Ordinary Rod up here, and the 4 Training Courts. Again, Training Court, very strong. People are realizing it's very strong. Keep that in the back of your mind when you guys are buying cards. Nick Hackerboard, I think I said that right. Zacian and Teleon, again, same thing like Mr. Peter Kika, but this list is wildly different. What is very different about it? Well, Nick here is playing a Zamazenta V to kind of just mitigate, buy some time against these big VMAX decks. There is no quick shooting in Teleon, so you can't offset any of the math. There is no stadium here, so Nick was not one of the people that was privy or savvy to the Search SR Bath. But Nick decided to take a different approach with it and play EXP Share. Now, EXP Share is really strong as well to just keep your energy in board if nobody's playing any Scrapper-style cards, but we do know that some people were, so your EXP shares are mitigated. But EXP Share, again, a very strong card, something that is going to have a lot of value, I think, in the post-rotation format if people are going to disrespect tools in stadiums. So definitely think worth having. Again, a Bird Keeper, like I mentioned earlier. Nick could have played heavier count, but I think 1 Bird Keeper, the idea is still there. Then we had my list, which is, I've talked about this in depth on my What Happened at the NJ 10K tournament. Yeah, I'm not going to go into depth about my list. It's kind of a hot mess. I loved it, though. Definitely would run this list again. I absolutely loved it. Then we had Ryan Mefford, Inteleon VMAX. Something newer to look at. It's the Inteleon line. Inteleon VMAX doesn't do a ton of damage off the bat, but you do have Melanie kind of coming in and being your crucial card. I think with the new Inteleon VMAX that's not actually coming out, this deck would be a lot better, but Inteleon VMAX is still very strong on its own, so keep that in mind looking forward to cards. Now, Ryan did play Great Ball in addition to the Quick and Lovable and Evo Incense, which I think is a little bit strange because he's only playing 2 copies of Evo Incense when Drizzile, Inteleon, and Inteleon VMAX all rely on having Evo Incense. So maybe if I was replaying this list, this would be a little bit of a change, maybe a 3-2 like flop the other way around. and I'd be okay with it. Again, we see Ryan playing a copy of Scrapper as well. A lot of people came in playing a copy of Tool Scrapper because they expected these Cape of Toughness style decks, or they just knew something that I didn't, because I definitely did not play Scrapper. Then we had 2 copies of Capacious Bucket. I think Bucket's also an insanely underrated card. 2 to 3 copies in a lot of water style decks. Very, very good. Again, Ryan also playing the Path to the Peaks, as well as the EXP share and the Capture Energy. I keep calling it calls for some reason. So these cards are also really strong. Again, the EXP share, another hidden buy kind of deal. And the Capture Energy, another a card that is very, very strong to play multiple copies of, because the early game setup is so important in this post-rotation format. So the person who has a better early game setup is often off to a really, really strong lead. Telescopic Sight, again, another card that is good in these sniping style decks. Besides that, it's not very strong. We have Ethan Heggie Hegster playing Shadow Rider Calyrex. Another very, very standard across the board list. This looks almost identical to Gabe Samara. So I'm not going to go into detail on this. I think this is identical to Gabe Samara's list. Then we had Jonathan Evans playing Zacian and Teleon in the top 16. So that was our top 8. I believe this is the exact same 60 as Peter Kiko, so I'm not going to go into depth on that one either. Then we had Carter Reidelbach. I played against Carter in Swiss. His deck is a little bit more interesting because he does play the Cresselia, the Galarian Zapdos, as well as the Alchemy line, but he's only playing a 1/1 line. Now, the Recycler comes into handy way more here, and the 4 copies of Training Court comes into handy way more here. Carter decided to deal with his darkness type weakness with Galarian Zapdos, and instead of playing the Aurora Energy that you typically would see right now in the standard format, he's playing Fighting Energy because they're much more they're recyclable with both Recycler and Training Court, so you can very freely pitch these Fighting Energies for no actual cost, and you can just get them back whenever you need them, and that's like very valuable actually. But only 1 copy of Galarian Zapdos and 1 copy of Alchemy VMAX does make me a little bit nervous. It feels like you're trying to juggle 2 things at the same time, so either go commit to 2 here or a 2/2 line here is how I feel about this situation. But besides that, you can see that these Shadow Rider Calyrex lists are going 4/4/4/4/4s across the board, and I really, really, really like that for consistency. You don't have these tips and tricks that you kind of would otherwise have, but just getting the ball rolling, getting the game set up is really what the most important part of these decks are. Then there was Elias, who was playing Ice Rider Calyrex. That was my opponent, and I'm going to try to get the footage for the top 16 match for tomorrow, hopefully. Elias was playing a lot of looking at the list, this is actually very interesting. Elias was playing only 1 of each Inteleon? Very interesting, actually. So the Drizzile engine's where he kind of like put the stopgap in. Not really what I expect from an Ice Rider Calyrex deck. Melanie is your primary card draw, and Marnie is the other. 4 Path to the Peak, so Elias was really hoping to get that path into play, stick your opponents, just make them get stuck really hard. The 1 Scoop Up Net is really cute, just to kind of make them play this weird prize game. You can eliminate something off the board to like your Sobble or Drizzile or something to just get that prize game in a different capacity. Bucket, again, a really good card, like we talked about. 1 Great Ball, very interesting. I don't know if this is actually worth it. Maybe it'd just be better as another Bucket or another Water Energy. We'll see. But I do like Elias's list. It's very cool. This is like what Ice Rider lists are going to look like in the future, so keep an eye for that. Charlie Lockyer playing Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon. Charlie did have a deck list error, and he wrote down the wrong Drizzile, unfortunately. So he was going to have to replace them, but he didn't want to. But Charlie's list is a little bit different from mine. It's playing 2 copies of each of the Inteleons. It doesn't have the Moltres line in it. He has the Crobat as well, which I think is a liability, but other players want to have that dig. The Cheryl is something we can see. The 1 Path to the Peak, very strong as well. And other than that, everything else looks very standard across the board. Grab your screenshot if you want it here. Michael McCutcheon here, also playing Rapid Strike Urshifu. Michael focusing on more of a Tower of Waters build, similar to myself, as well as playing the 2/2 Inteleons. I think this is probably more correct than the other way I was playing it, but I like the 3/1 because I think Quick Shooting does a lot more. Michael here's overplaying 2 Cheryl, kind of relying on the fact that he's going to use the tower, use these air balloons, use the switching cards to kind of use Gale Thrust more than the sniping option here. So that's a very interesting way to look at things. 4 Research, 2 Boss, 3 Marnie, very staple supporter line across the board, I think. And then the 9 Energy Count, very, very good. Don't have much else to say. Vaughn over here, I think this is the exact same 60 that the other 2 played, Gabe and Ethan. And we had Lyle playing Shadow Rider Calyrex. Now, Lyle's list is a little bit more interesting. He does have all of the cookie cutter cards we've talked about already, but Galarian Rapidash V coming in to kind of be that early game threat, be that a little bit of a menace, take some of those bigger boys down a peg, so either Alchemy or Shadow Rider can clean up much easier, even Cresselia if you have the energy into play. Very cool card. I don't know if Galarian Rapidash has much of a place in the upcoming format, but it is something to keep an eye out for. Gabe Shumway looks like a very similar list to what the other guys were playing, so it looks like 4 of the same 60 did end up making top 16. That's actually very impressive. And 3 of the same Zacian list. So you can already tell that Zacian and Shadow Rider are probably 2 of the more consistent decks across the board. Nothing much else really to say about this. I just wanted to give a breakdown on what the decks do, kind of what looks good, what doesn't look good, because I think when you're analyzing cards in the upcoming format, kind of looking at lists, this is kind of how I personally look at stuff, and this is some of my just out loud thoughts. This is like mental notes that I would make when I would start building a deck or like preparing for in a tournament. Like, what do I need to be able to answer now in this, after this tournament? Some of the things like Sir Chester Bath, knowing that other people are playing Scrapper, therefore my usage of tools probably, or like reliance on tool cards, is probably going to go down significantly. Sir Chester Bath going up and other people playing 4 of stadiums means that I want to be able to deal with, like, play more stadiums. Besides Carter, we didn't see that anyone else really played Zapdos or any answers to darkness typing, and there was not that much Rapid Strike. Actually, there was only like a couple in Top Cut. Maybe Eternatus or something where I could play like Heavy Tool Jammer or the like Liepard line could be very good. Like, that's like my thought process coming off the back of this. But that all being said, post rotation is going to change significantly with the release of Evolving Skies, and we're going to explore that together on this channel. So remember to hit that subscribe button, like, you know the deal. Leave a comment below; it really helps the algorithm. But we will figure out what cards are going to be good with Evolving Skies. I think I've got a couple cards that I think are going to be really strong. We're going to explore them together, figure it out, and we'll get you geared up for locals. So thank you guys as always for watching, and until tomorrow, peace out.